Hey, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the ReMinders podcast. So this episode is an addition to the Mindful Review series. So my homie Nicholas Antone and I are taking a close listen to a remix that he did for one of my songs, which you're hearing in the background right now. This is called Lunar Rising. So Nicholas releases music under the moniker Nichetone. He's put out a handful of singles of his own compositions. He did a lo-fi EP last year, which was really cool. Highly recommend that one. And this is I don't know how to describe it stylistically. I mean, you'll hear it, but it's very vibey. Definitely a moody vibe. And he did a fantastic job remixing and reimagining this particular song. We just kick it off, broing out about our approaches to the musical creative process. One note is I recorded this through a handheld Zoom interface that really failed me. So I don't know what happened with that. The audio was absolute trash. So luckily we had the camera phone audio as a backup. So that's what you're hearing. Forewarning, the volume's a little bit quieter or not to the standard that we would like. Anyway, fun conversation. Let's go ahead and dive on in.
But with this year in general has been my goal to do a track a month kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And I think more than anything, that's kind of the thing that's been more motivating because it's as much as my routines and my personal things can change, it's there's this deadline I've set for myself, and so it's however I gotta get to that. And I'm finding that if I can get to that in the least stressful way, then that's the way to go.
That's what I was gonna ask. Are you finding that it is a motivating factor, or does it also feel like you're pressuring yourself in a negative way? Does it feel are you hitting the deadlines that you're setting for yourself?
Yeah, I've been hitting the deadlines I've been setting, which have been cool. It's more of a thing where I feel I'm starting to kind of break the process of producing songs into different sections, being able to be the first part being more ideation, where could this go, arrangement kind of thing, and then sort of spending that more specific time on, okay, we're gonna nail down what actually needs to be here, what can be cut out, that kind of thing. So trying to give that ideation time enough time, but not so much to where it's you've had this loop or you've had this idea for 2 weeks. It's this is either moving forward or it's not. Mm-hmm. Or it can move forward at a different time and it just needs to be shelved or something. So trying to get more in that mindset of, just being give yourself that open creative space because you need that, but this doesn't have to just be I think there's I don't know, just kind of maybe a traditional story about the way art needs to be made, or I think people think of artists or musicians as this, they just, you sit back and you're I'm chilling, oh, this idea was here, and it's either it's there and it all comes out, or it's not. And I'm realizing just the more time that I can allow myself to put some kind of structure around that, it feels there's a lot more that honestly comes out and just continues to flow.
Yeah, I feel that and definitely appreciate that. Yeah, because I've definitely been more in the camp of just waiting for inspiration to strike.
Yeah.
In which case I do experience kind of what you were saying of there's been at least 3 or so songs that have basically all been written in one sitting,
Yeah.
And that's a fun place to get to, where you're just in that flow and it's just, all right, this song wants to be birthed, let's do it. But there's a lot to be said for the discipline of just facilitating time and space.
Yeah.
To just sitting down and again, literally just putting aside time. Mm-hmm. Maybe nothing will come through, but at least you have that designated discipline for this is the window of time that I'm going to address and give attention to art or whatever your craft, whatever the task may be. But I think artists in particular tend to not have that tight of the disciplinary side of things, and just sort of waiting for the muse to come knocking on the door.
Yeah, and it's hard to know because I haven't had too many. I really feel I've only had one track of mine where it's kind of felt everything sort of come at one time. But yeah, I wonder if it's a thing where if it's legitimately, like if you could look back on those instances versus other instances where it was a little bit more structured and less like muse inspirational, if you really can find that much of an objective difference to like how the actual thing turned out.
As far as like quality, as far as like just which ones are better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really like, maybe some people can, but I think what a lot of times the thing is, it's a matter of like how it feels to the artist, honestly. Like how it feels to be in that space of like, when something just kind of comes out of you, there is almost more of that like, you want to tell people like, this came out of me like this wasn't this process that took this like painstaking, it was like,
right,
and so there's
revision after revision.
Yeah, so I don't know, like I think that there's not really a for sure answer on it. I think both things need to exist for sure, but yeah, I always kind of wonder about that, like if there's, you know, because yeah, I don't think the greatest songs of all time or greatest productions, like they definitely, I think they've come in all kinds of like different ways.
Absolutely. 100%. And you know, I come from mostly like a progressive type of background where that like, that is more of an approach of meticulous, disciplined, like composition.
Yeah.
You know, which I've found that that's not really my style.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm curious what you thought when you were growing up listening to your favorite songs and stuff. Like, I assumed that everything I was hearing was like thoughtfully written, like maybe not written down on paper, but like this is where that note goes and it goes there for a reason, and you know, like writing harmonies versus just like what I think it actually was, and this is what it is for me. It's like you write a song, maybe have some chord progressions and lyrics, and then all of the layers are usually just kind of like written in the studio / improvised. Yeah, that's really interesting to think about. I feel like I probably thought the same thing, that things were like a lot more structured. Yeah. Maybe coming from more of a place of just like, I played guitar since I was 10, but I definitely didn't like learn theory or all that kind of stuff until later on. And so I think maybe looking at it from more of that perspective as a kid, like these are like special people that can do these crazy things. And like, I don't know how to do that. Probably looked at it from more of that angle. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting the more you like go into it, there's just so many, it seems like everybody's different. And I'm honestly kind of blown away when it is people that, and I don't really know that I have an example off the top of my head, but people that you would maybe think are more out there, ethereal, always just like throwing things kind of out there. Like maybe Prince is a good example of that. Okay. I heard something on him recently and just, you know, and I can't even say I know too much of his music. I just know he wrote like a lot of different albums and things. And some things that very much hit the mainstream culture and other things that are very lost and exploratory and maybe would be considered not super good. But it seemed like he was just always kind of working, and I just have always sort of envisioned him maybe as someone who's always in this flow of when it feels good. But I heard this thing about him being in the studio multiple times at like 4 a.m. just like having this thing and like getting it right. And so it's interesting to just like you never really know what someone's and maybe even his process changed over different times. True. Yeah, depending on your setup. Like I was just thinking about that for myself. Like I would do well to, I mean, as you can see, I have chairs in this room. I refuse to use them. Like, I need a good work chair. I'm just like, I've been on the standing desk and then like sitting on the floor, and I was actually, the song I'm going to show you later, I was recording electric guitar for it, and I was just like, I'm trying to do this line that like was slightly past my comfort zone. Like I'm like learning it as I'm writing it, as I'm recording it, you know. I'm like trying to do it perfectly, you know, from the get-go, realizing like, dude, I need to like practice this first, and also like have some fucking room to move and like not be caught up with my cables, and you know what I mean. So it's just like so much of it is like literal. Again, it's the like balance of like artists tend to be more, you know, free flowing type of. Is that the right-brained type of? I always forget which one to switch. Yeah, and tend to like not pay so much attention to the left brain, like disciplinary and just like structural things, but we need both so much, you know, in order to like really, again, facilitate a space to get into a flow state without running into obstacles, you know, like paving out the path so that you can roll down the hill a little bit without running into, you know, something that you didn't pick up off the floor.
Right.
It's just, you know, those things go hand in hand. So yeah, literally just having different studios to work in is going to change your approach a little bit. And the evolution of technology. I mean, most of the artists Prince's age, you know, they kind of went through that, like, advent of digital recording and everything. Right. Whereas we grew up with that, you know. So, yeah, even the fact that we grew up with digital and being able to have, you know, just, like, GarageBand and simple access, easy access to recording and producing, like, that was a huge privilege compared to the people that we were listening to at the time and looking up to. I'm like, oh, I'm trying to like emulate these old school, you know, cats from 60s and 70s, and it's like we're dealing with an entirely different landscape of you know, what was available. And yeah, just I don't know, it's crazy. That's a whole different conversation, just like how different the musical landscape is these days versus what I still kind of consider the golden years, 60s and 70s.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with that. I think that there's still, like, musically and what's being created from a compositional, or not even necessarily, like from a production standpoint too, I think that things beyond then and into the future too were, you know, are cool and will continue to be cool. But I think that idea of, there's kind of just an allure about, like, this person's in a room, they're singing this live, they're in a room that's made to sound good specifically for this. Like, it's not your bedroom, it's not like, you know, even people do cool things like recording outside with birds and stuff, and it's like, it's cool, but it's not that, like, it just feels magical thinking of it in that way. And it kind of is, honestly. And the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of dollars poured into those songs, and so, yeah, it would be cool digitally if, like, that can be replicated in some way, or maybe people's ears just are evolving to the point that, like, people won't be able to hear that warmth, I guess.
I think that's true.
But I don't really know. Like, I'm always kind of curious about the kids these days, you know, because I don't know, like, if a 10-year-old thing, like, if they, even though this wasn't, like, I was listening to Continuum by John Mayer on the way here, and, like, that's definitely one of my favorite albums. Really? And one that was, you know, early 2000s, and so not golden age of 60s and 70s, what we were talking about, but it's an album that I listen to and I'm like, this is simple, this is warm, this is, like, you can tell there's lots of studio choices being made and just color to it. But I wonder, like, if a kid today listens to that versus something that's a little bit more modern, like, would they think of the previous as being that, like, warm, or would they think of it being old, or, like, just all that kind of stuff?
I mean, it's a good question. I definitely can't answer. Yeah. But yeah, I'm curious of that too. But you mentioned what year was that? Like early 2000s? I think
it was like 2005.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, not what I would consider the golden years of, like, musical ingenuity, but possibly the golden years of production. Oh, yeah. For real, in my opinion. Yeah. Because, you know, I mean, there were limitations of the 60s, 70s recording. Like, yeah, they probably sounded amazing on their Neve, you know, monitors in the studio. Yeah, that's true. But printing them on vinyl and being listened to through God knows what kind of whatever. Or even just hearing it on the radio. Like, there is definitely not just an aesthetic difference, but a qualitative difference between something that came out, something that was recorded then versus, I mean, just look at like hard rock or like metal stuff, you know. I mean, granted, that was sort of like the dawn of metal was the 70s. Yeah. But God, listening to like a record from Tool from 2006 or 2001 versus Black Sabbath late 70s, like night and day difference, you know what I mean? Like the production, like just smoothness, even if it was digital and maybe didn't have like the analog. Well, I mean, a lot of stuff was still recorded analog, but just, you know, printed to CD instead of vinyl. But yeah, no, I think those years were when production got like really good. Yeah. Like just the fidelity. Yeah. Well, I wonder too, because I mean,
it's not necessarily fidelity, but I do feel like it plays a role in it with like, because early 2000s, that's when like Pro Tools kind of became a lot more standard.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Were Tool recording to like Pro Tools and stuff?
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what, I know Rick Beato did like a video on this. He really kind of mentions that time of rock in particular, like early 2000s going into it, where Pro Tools was more standard, and specifically, yeah, like Beat Detective and like actual real drums being slightly quantized and drum samples being brought in to kind of like. So I do wonder, obviously, like somebody like, you know, Danny Carey, who's a god of, it's like he probably wasn't going down that route.
Yeah.
And maybe they as a whole were like, we organically don't want to sound that way, but I know for sure that was right around that time where it was like, yeah, you played great, but we're also going to add some fat kick samples under this.
Yeah. Which, to taste, you know,
It's
I'm not
cool.
arguing
I
with.
love it,
It
yeah.
definitely can go too far.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I think our generation, and definitely people younger than us, I think we literally just have a different musical palette. Like our ears literally are just used to, you know, we're used to hearing, you know, you and me, or maybe I should speak for myself, I know I'm a little bit older than you, but you know, like listening to music through an iPod,
right?
And then, you know, then people maybe 10 years younger than me just listening to music through a phone speaker, you know, literally being okay with that.
Yeah.
Like I do it sometimes too, just like, I'm like, fuck it, I don't need to have the headphones or Bluetooth speaker for every listen. Sometimes I'll just throw it on, iPhones these days or whatever else. Yeah, they sound pretty decent. But is it the experience of, you know, state of the art, you know, stereo systems with the vinyl record and the warmth and the fidelity, you know, all that, like, yeah, it's an entirely different atmosphere. So I think probably most people can't hear a difference between MP3s and waves, and probably can't hear much of a difference between a wave and like a state-of-the-art record through a. But that's the thing with like people that act like vinyl is superior. Like it requires so many dollars for you even to hear the potential better quality of records. Most people are just going to hear the hiss and the, you know, crackling and coming through like crappy little speakers. Like it's obviously not going to sound any better. It's probably not even as good as playing it through your phone. For real.
That's true.
But yeah, there's a lot that goes into vinyl. You know, you gotta have a great turntable with the right belt. You gotta get the right preamp. You gotta get the right speakers. Like, there's a lot that goes into it, and most people just don't care. Yeah. You know, which is kind of sad.
It is to an extent. I guess the way that I think of it is like, that really takes. Because, music serves different purposes. I think of it more of an extroverted and introverted kind of thing. Like, because music can always kind of be both. I think that something like playing through a phone speaker, I think of more... I guess when I think of the quality as being less high quality, I think of more of the extroversion sort of vibe with it, in the sense of, like, this is music, and the group of people hearing it together maybe care less about how it sounds and more of like what it's saying, what the message is, what like the vibes are. Not to the extent though, like obviously people at concerts, that's a big example of lots of people together. I guess just when I think of, it's like somebody with the vinyl, or like as a consumer going that sort of level with it, it does like, this is either because this person individually loves music that much that they want to like hear it that way, and that they kind of want to maybe, you know, bring a small group of people. I've just never been a part of like a vinyl session listening to people where there's been like more than a few peeps just on the couch. It would be cool if there was like, you could get 20 people together and listen to a vinyl and it was like, oh wow. But
or even just have listening parties. I've thought about that before. I've thought about doing like, instead of releasing my songs into the ether, like throwing a party and like have an intentional listening session. You know? On that note, how often do you find yourself today, and I'm curious, like when you were a kid, like how often do you listen to music just for the sake of like literally doing nothing else, just listening to music?
When I was a kid, it was just all the time.
Really?
It was constantly. It was like but I mean, it definitely. It enhanced things. It was like, I'm going to listen to this while I'm like walking home from school, or I got to the point though in school too, it was like I would I was always a good kid, so I never like broke the rules and listened like in class. But I was always like, okay, in between like the 5 minutes in between this, I'm gonna like pull it out and listen to that one song that I'm like thinking about listening to before I go to
That's funny.
What about you?
Similar, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was always listening to music when I was a kid. Like, while I'm doing homework, definitely to and from school, that type of thing. Even when I was in college, I was one of those nerds that would literally just walk around Chicago just with headphones, just bopping around like they're my earmuffs. They actually did double as that function.
Chicago.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's tapered down in like the last few years because I listen to podcasts. A fair amount these days too. I have been making more time lately to like literally listen to a full album or even just put on a playlist on shuffle. That's more of a risky move for me personally. You know me, I'm an album guy. Like I want to hear it the way the artist intended it.
Right.
That's already kind of like an old school thing to say these days because a lot of like you know modern artists aren't really writing albums. But definitely from 60s through 90s and even I mean there's some definitely like solid albums from the early 2000s as well. But literally just laying down and like doing some light yoga or whatever and just listening. But I got out of that habit for probably years.
You were finding you were listening to music more like as kind of a thing to supplement something else that you're doing.
Just in the car or while doing chores or whatever else, but like to really just listen and just get the ear candy of the production, because that's what got me interested in producing was listening to stuff on headphones and be like, dang, like how'd they even come up with that sound, And I remember Muse, the band Muse in particular, their album In Absolution. Do you know that one?
My brother's a big fan. I know like just their more popular songs.
It has one of their big hits, Hysteria is on that.
That's that one with the bass line. Oh yeah, when I got a funny. So I went to NKU for school, and I like randomly. I think I was like putting out Craigslist ads or something because I was like, I kind of want to. I had been in like one or two groups, but they didn't really pan out. I'm like, I kind of want to start my own band, and I like put an ad up for it and found this bass player and super cool, super nice guy. He was super knowledgeable too of like, oh, we can go to this room at NKU and nobody's there and like practice and it'll be cool. But then like we tried to have this session together and he knew that bass line
and nothing else.
And he played that bass line and it was just sort of, I was like trying to be like, let's do something with this chord progression. He would just like lay down.
Do you know the song?
Yeah. Like, no, I don't know it still. And then I guess somehow we decided on a second practice and then we brought a drummer in and who like couldn't really even play drums and it was just drumming happening, not going, hysteria, me just kind of like, I'm like, this ain't gonna work. Not gonna be a thing. But I tried.
Yeah, I've had my fair share of jams with randos on Craigslist.
It's Craigslist.
Oh, the days of Craigslist. Yeah. I mean, I've actually made some pretty decent connections on Craigslist.
Yeah.
Like, I made a good friend in high school through Craigslist who went to Wyoming High School. Yeah. And he connected me with the guys that I ended up being in Soleco with.
Oh, nice.
Like, that came through initially a Craigslist connection. So yeah.
You ever been on there recently for like the musician section?
Every now and again I will. But just to see. Yeah. It's been a while, but
yeah, it feels like it's either very specific, professional, like we need this person, we play these kind of covers, or it's like, hey, I'm 27 male, I'm thinking about like a shoegazy thing with this, and I play keys, but also a little bit of drums. And it's just like, all right, yeah.
The ones that kill me are, all right, I'm looking for a bassist, and a guitar player, and a singer, and a keyboard player.
It's like, what do you do?
I'm a lyricist. Lyricist and producer. What you gotta do. Yeah. But yeah, I really rarely get on Craigslist because I'm just like, I mean, it was kind of seen as like sort of sketchy when I was a kid, but like also legitimate. But now that there's Facebook Marketplace and like also just Facebook,
right?
I'm just like, who really uses Craigslist? Yeah. But who knows? All right, with those thoughts in mind, you want to listen to some music?
Yeah, for sure.
Let's get some intentional listening going.
Cool.
Let's just do a real quick little grounding meditation if you're
Yeah.
game.
Sure.
All right. Coming back to noticing that we're breathing, heart's beating, and subconsciousness is keeping the body flowing, doing its thing. Don't even have to think about it. But we can choose to notice that it's happening. Use that anchor to bridge our consciousness with our subconsciousness. Enter into that gateway into the flow state. Being actively still and finding the stillness and motion. Just follow a few rounds of our breathing cycle. Feeling the sensations of air coming in through the nostrils. Filling the lungs and the belly. Exhaling back into the external world. So from this centered presence, let's enjoy Nichetone's remix of Lunar Rising. perfect for a day like today, honestly.
Yeah.
That is the mood of today.
Vibey.
Yeah. Yeah. I like after the storm or before the storm, sort of.
Yeah.
Dark rain clouds, but you got like the silver lining poking through type of vibe.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, love that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are two things that, well, first, how did you describe, because did I do some sort of like slowdown for the way the bongos end? And I remember you commenting and saying something like, oh yeah. How did you describe it?
Something about, I didn't say falling off a cliff, I don't think, but for some reason that's in my head about it. Because I remember that I sent you the ending of that, I think sort of thinking like that maybe I wanted to just fade it out, and so like just leaving whatever.
Oh, okay.
But then, yeah, when you did that and kind of like stopped it like that, yeah, I don't remember what I said exactly.
I feel like you said something like, yeah, I love the dishes falling in the kitchen.
Maybe.
Type of vibe or whatever.
Hopefully it wasn't that.
It was something funnier than that.
Yeah. Doesn't exactly give off that chaotic vibe. But it does kind of.
It does sort of feel like an unraveling or something. You know, like it's together and then just sort of like.
Yeah.
Like. Dismantles or something at the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I was thinking of that in conjunction with the last lyric, and yeah, it kind of interestingly does feel. I would say that those almost feel like they're a little bit different because it's "Be Home," right? The lyric.
Yeah.
Be home, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it feels like that "Be Home," like kind of that integration is almost like complete in a way. Mm. I think that falling off almost does give it a more. But the way I was thinking of it just then was like, it is a falling off, but it almost feels like that drumming, even though it was steady. Maybe also there was a lot of drums in it. There's almost like a chaos in all of those drums. Mm-hmm. And so it almost felt like it was like building up to this thing of like, it needs to be this way to get to home. And then it's just like, nah. You're like already kind of, that's how I was kind of thinking.
I
like
love that. Yeah. I feel that for sure.
Yeah.
That's great.
Because I love what you did there production wise too. Like, I think that I must have layered, I don't know how many, like 8 or 9 djembes that are virtually kind of playing. Oh, I guess I just sent you the group of them together. Yeah. But it was at least like 8 or 9 takes. Like I wanted that bass layer of it, but just like random, more melodic, higher stuff, like in and out. But
nice.
I like that you added some like distortion on there a little bit.
Yeah. So I was gonna tell you what that is. I added a subgroup. You know, like a wet signal to add to the original dry signal of Rectify. Do you ever use that plugin? It's one of the stock Pro Tools. Yeah, it just gives like a lo-fi isn't the right word. A rectify. Yeah. But just like trashy, like it trashes it up. Yeah. Like it's distortion, but with a certain like. I can't think of the way to describe it, but I like to add that, like, just a little bit can bring out some of the punch in, like, a drum track. Yeah. To the point where it's almost, like, sub-perceptional, you know? It's a way of saying that.
Sub-perception. No, I know what you mean, though. Yeah.
Or you can just, like, totally trash them out and go super lo-fi, like... garbage can type of vibe with it, but I like that plugin. It's fun. Yeah. And the other thing I was thinking, the flip is the first thing you hear. What is that like gasp? Was that from one of the stems, or did you add that?
Yeah, that's Marielle.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
From one of the stems. I don't remember where because
she's just gasping before.
Well, no, because I feel like actually. Because you sent me 2 things of her vocals, and the one was I think.
Just 2, really?
Yeah, the one was I think a little bit more harmony kind of stuff, but then there was another one that I feel like was just like her vocals already super affected, and I feel like that was in there. I feel like I didn't like the actual gasp itself. I know I might have put something else on top of that, but I think the actual.
Did you lower the pitch?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Well, I did lower. I mean, I lowered the pitch of. Everything you sent me by 1 semitone.
Oh.
You didn't recognize that? Yeah, you were.
Oh.
Original tracks, I think, in C sharp.
Yes.
And yeah, I moved it down to C.
Okay.
Honestly,
gotcha.
because I was messing with MIDI stuff and I was playing, even though I can transpose my MIDI controller, I was like, you know what, for some of these melodies, I want my white keys. I pitched it down to C. And I mean, that along just with like the slight vibe change of the original track, I thought bringing it down one lower was like a little bit.
Love it. Yeah. That's a good move for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I did not put that together.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, and this kind of maybe explains it. I was gonna say that I love the way that you treated my voice, and maybe lowering it is partially what I was hearing.
Yeah.
But it did feel like deeper and like, I don't know. I've had this experience like when Tangled Branches. My buddy Zach, when he did the Tangled Branches.
Yeah, I love that track. Soul Ray
remix. Yeah, I was thinking similarly that like, wow, I like how he treated my voice. And I think that there's probably an element of just like, I mean, that's the one thing that you're the most biased when you're mixing your own voice. So like a level of objectivity, having someone else mix my voice is probably the way to go.
Yeah.
Sometimes, or at least as a reference point, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, lowering it too could also be why I was hearing it so differently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that, and because I feel like I know for like the verses, well, the first verse I pretty much kept exactly as you had it in your track, like the amount of measures and just, I guess the progression's like slightly different, but not that much different on the synth versus the guitar as to like what's going on. But I think that like, yeah, sometimes allowing for that vulnerability where it's like you hear your own voice and then somebody using like maybe that section of your voice like over another one kind of a thing can kind of, it just, whether it's like a positive or negative judgment that you have of it, it's just sort of a thing where it's like to just know that somebody else is like using your own voice as an instrument, or like not as an instrument so much in this case, but that somebody else is hearing something that they're like crafting together about it, I think can take away. But that's the funny thing too, is like, well, because yeah, the only thing that I felt like I was really honing in on your voice is because I was chopping things up. So it was very much like, these two words are like so close and I want to use that first section of it, but if I cut it like right here, it's going to have that S in it or something kind of a thing. So that's really only the points where I felt like I was like hyper focused on like your voice sounding this way. But beyond that, I think like just in the track, it's just like I hear it, I'm like, I like it. It sounds good. It's a vibe. It's like, so it is interesting how we always kind of self-judge.
Yeah,
I think.
For sure. Yeah, it's kind of impossible not to have that when you're that close to something. Even, I mean, as you've sort of gone through this process, like mixing your own work versus having someone else work on your stuff. It's just like that level of objectivity, like I was saying, you know, getting out of the weeds of your own creation and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But, yeah, what was the process like? Like, what were your feelings, inspirations? Like, was it daunting to get a bunch of stems? And, I mean, I know you've done remixes before.
Yeah, that was really the first one that because I guess
we did just the Frequency Matters
remixed
one.
myself.
Yeah, which is, I guess a little different.
Yeah. I feel like, so I definitely, and not to judge myself on it, I guess thinking of just the way I work now, I think I took a little bit longer on it than I would have liked to, even though I'm happy with the way that it ended up coming out. Because initially I remember I got the stems from you and I don't think I ever sent you that version, and I'm honestly interested to know if I still have it. But there was a version and it was kind of going in this direction of more like, I think there was a synth in there and it was more like laid back, but it was like way more, I don't want to say emo, because it wasn't emo in the sense of like thinking of the genre rock, but it was like a lot more, I don't know, it just had this like sad vibe to it, and like, I don't know, like I really liked it, but then I was sort of like sitting on that for a month, and then I was kind of like, should I even send Sean this? I don't even know how I'm feeling about it, and then going back finally to it, and then I think it was the same synth that I had, and then I changed it to this pattern, and then that's when I started chopping vocals up, and then it was like, okay, like this is a vibe that it can kind of take. So
are there still elements in that present, or did you scrap it completely?
I feel like it was mostly scrapped. Okay. Yeah, it was like kind of an idea, because I think, there was just a general, not so much a nervousness in that you'd be like, ugh, Like, I don't like that. But definitely a nervousness in, like, this is a vibe that I've never really done before myself, or, like, then
as far as musically, tonally, or just, like, doing a remix for someone else?
Doing a remix, but also kind of musically, too. Like, something that's really, really, like, washed out, really, like, only kind of going back and forth between those two chords, and, kind of focusing on, I've done, like, had done lo-fi stuff in the past that was more vibey, but never really anything with, like, I want this vocal to really, like, soak and, like, really, like, create this thing that, like, you're not really going to be able to dance to. Although later on, I think there was a part of me that was like, for the other sections that came through, I was kind of like, I feel like this needs some kind of lift to it in some way.
It is a good blend of those two things, like the vibey emo, if you will, the emotional sort of essence, and then like you got some little bounce there, especially once we added the ducking element.
Absolutely.
With that,
it sounds like a house track kind of.
Yeah, there for a second.
That's really cool. I think it was maybe too like the synths in the first one are definitely a lot more, but and I don't even remember the specifics of those chords because whenever I write stuff, like, keys are not my main instrument, but I love to, like, make chords, and I know, at least, like, triads and stuff, and I really like to experiment with just, adding the extensions, the ninths and 11ths and things like that, and so, really, I feel like adding those kind of things to give it more of that mood. I don't know, it's not necessarily a fear, but sometimes it's just a knowledge where it's like, if you take this from a C to a C, add 9, 13, whatever, it's just like it is allowing for more almost nuance, I guess, versus just like this is happy or sad.
True.
And sometimes that adds a whole other element of like, but that's a space I think I like to be in, of just like simultaneously creating and then like feeling at the same time as things are kind of like moving along. Never necessarily being, but then eventually, you kind of have to pick like this is sort of the main vibe that you're going for, I guess.
True.
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe there were definitely like some slight fears around it, but also just as much excitement, and then finally realizing that like, but I feel like even when I was like done with the main kind of arrangement and sending it to you, it was just like, I thought you were going to dig it. There's just always the element though, of like, this is vulnerable to be like this, I took someone's song and like, they might be like, don't put this out.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I mean, it is actually, that was kind of something I was curious about asking you too, is just like literally like how different does it feel to work on someone else's song? Like, I know you're working with Lucinda right now, and you've done production for like Marielle and stuff like that, so you're not like 100% foreign to working on other people's songs, but like doing a remix is a little different because there's already a version.
Definitely.
And doing a whole new take on it. So I can definitely see that element of it. It's not just like you creating for the sake of whatever. So I can see that there would maybe be a slight layer of, I don't know, pressure. Yeah,
definitely some pressure, some fear, but I'm honestly happy to have gotten through it, and it just made me more pumped to do more, and
hell yeah.
So that was cool. That was definitely cool in that.
So you got the tracks, you got the stems. So did you like visualize what you wanted to do with it? Did you just start chopping some stuff? Like where'd you start? Like how did you decide where and how to go about doing it?
Yeah, I think it was more the chops came first. Yeah. And then
just like finding elements that you knew you wanted to work with.
Yeah, which actually I remember. And I think I told you a little bit about that, so I won't go too deep. But the way that I was chopping things during that time before I had this Serato sample is what it's called now, and basically was finding things. And I think that's what I did. Yeah, I took I meticulously went through all of the tracks and kind of like listened for like what parts of this vocal am I going to like or like want to use. And then I cut all of those clips and then like I think I had like 15 or 20 of them, and then saved them. I think to start off, actually, I didn't even really have your vocals like as verses. I think it was like I had verse sections, but I kind of just had different sort of percussive vocal chops in there. Okay. But there really wasn't any kind of like full lyrical phrases or anything. And so at that point, that's where I was just kind of like, you don't got to reinvent the wheel. Like, go back, listen to what he actually did in the track, and be like, what sections of these can you take and which can you kind of mix up a little bit. And so that, honestly, going back to your original arrangement, like, added to that inspiration of it too, rather than just like, because I was thinking like, it's like, I want this remix to be original, but I was like, you don't have to do everything. You can,
like reformatting the words. So I'm saying something totally different.
Exactly. Like each syllable, right?
I don't know any of the other words. break.
Yeah. That was the one major, I guess, because I don't even remember what you said in the original. Because do you even say that you want to break through fear, or was it something else?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it's we can learn to break through again and again.
Yeah. And I think
fear was letting go of fear.
Okay.
Yeah.
See,
I love that. So I guess I'm curious, like, how much of what we just heard was like intentional imagining what you wanted to do versus finding out in the process.
Honestly, I feel like for this song it was like 95% finding out in the process.
Word.
Besides when like it got back to the idea of let's like make this first verse what it is.
Gotcha.
That was very like,
that was premeditated
for sure, but also like after all that stuff kind of came through for sure, which is honestly funny thinking about that now. Maybe I was kind of taking that to a personal level just in the process of making it to where I was like, I want to make this lyric break through fear, because maybe that's how I felt like I was actively doing that and kind of like making that remix there.
Nice.
And I don't know, but that's what I wanted the vibe to kind of be.
Oh yeah. Love it. Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Love it. So did you consider at any point, like, just to be honest, if I was doing a remix and I got the vocals, I would have been like, I'm going to go with Mary Alice as a lead vocal. Did you consider that at all?
So I really feel like I didn't, because I just didn't feel like there were any. She definitely felt like throughout, at least the vocals I got from her were very supporting of.
Yeah, I guess that is true.
What the main was doing, and I definitely wanted to include her in there. But then even with that, like, tried to. And I haven't really talked to her too specifically about. I know that she's in it and she knows she's in it.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to her too specifically about it, like how she feels about it. Because that's something I wanted to do. I had her vocals in there, and you had them like very affected already.
Yeah.
But specifically with like I think some of the choruses and pre-choruses going in, putting like that distortion on her voice, kind of heavy. Mm-hmm. Really wanting to like, because I feel like I've collaborated with her and I do always hear her voice up front, and I wouldn't say it's pretty. It's definitely not. It's definitely a very powerful out front voice.
Yeah. But
to kind of thinking it more in this way, where it was like, I was hearing the sounds she was making, and with that distortion, like a little bit of like pain with that, a little bit of like, this is not necessarily the context that I hear this voice in a lot. And maybe because it was like higher pitched too versus a male vocal, a little bit of that, like, I don't know. I just, no matter what, I like that contrast always.
Definitely. Cool. Yeah, I was just curious. But yeah, that's true. I did kind of forget that this one, because she's also on Or Am I?
Yeah.
Where that one is like, we're kind of both singing all of the words. But yeah, you're right. This one is a little bit more like backup vocal, like echoing words versus like singing the whole thing outright.
Yeah. I honestly did that when I was going through the chops too. I was listening to the vocals of her and how you had affected those, and I was honestly just vibing on that for like an hour or so one day. It was like, these are really crazy affected, and all these, they're going everywhere. I'm like, this is cool.
Right on.
I liked it.
Yeah. Okay, so at that point we end up listening to an unreleased track of mine called Begin Again. I'm actually still working on it. It was really just a demo. But I decided to go ahead and cut the episode there, and I'll leave that portion for a bonus episode in the future. So anyway, I appreciate you tuning in, spending some time with some music and some intentionality. And if you've made it this far into the episode, I'm curious if you want to leave a comment, let me know what music you like to do this type of deep listening to. If you have a certain album or a certain handful of songs, would love to know. I haven't done too much of these mindful reviews this year, so I want to sort of get back into it. think the last one that I did for commercial music was a deep dive on Coheed and Cambria, the first 3 songs of their Good Apollo 4 album. So I was trying that a little bit with the commercial stuff, doing like a full side of vinyl or like a 2 or 3 song spread. It seemed like those drew a little less of a crowd, so I might just do a single song. So if you have any requests, let me know. On that note, today, as I'm recording this, is the full moon. The pink moon is April's full moon title. 2 years ago, I did a mindful review of Nick Drake's classic album, Pink Moon. So if you're interested in that album, or if you've never heard it, it's side B that I'm listening to and reviewing, and give a little bit of a introduction to Nick Drake and a general celebration of his life. You know, this is a folk singer that really never enjoyed his fame. He didn't get famous until after he died, and he died in a sort of tragic way, died young, early 70s. I think Pink Moon came out in like 71, 72, something like that. So anyway, that's out there if you're interested in that. So appreciate you. Till next time.